Hi, I'm Katie of Inhale Exhale Connect, and I'm here to share my resource with you, which is a mindfulness training for teachers. Thank you so much to Educating Mindfully for hosting the resource showcase and supporting your community's mental health and well-being goals. Educating Mindfully is a 501(c) nonprofit and thrives on our community support together. Please visit www.educatingmindfully.org to learn more, subscribe, become a member, and explore their micro credential program. And now I'd like to share with you a bit more about my program. To give you a quick overview, I offer an 8-week course that is a dive into your own personal well being as both a human and a classroom teacher, as well as an opportunity to explore the integration of mindfulness tools and techniques into your already existing classroom routines in order to make your day more balanced, more harmonious, and more peaceful for both you and your students. During the training, we touch on emotional intelligence, SEL through a mindfulness lens. We dive into meditation, self compassion, the improvement of focus and productivity, all sorts of stuff. The program was designed by me taking my personal experience as a classroom teacher, as a mindfulness and meditation coach, and also my own personal practices, and wrapping them together into a powerful training that is designed specifically for school faculty. So now let's take a closer look at what I'm offering and how it can benefit you. My plan for this presentation is for you to walk away with some tools in your toolbox that you can use right away for you, yourself, and also in your classroom. You'll also get a snapshot of what a session looks like and a peek into some of the various topics that we'll cover throughout the training. We're going to jump right in, and I'm going to share the first tool with you now. It's a practice called the mindful moment. I start all of my sessions with a mindful moment, whether I'm working with adults or children, and this is just an opportunity for us to pause and become present together. So let's do this together right now. I invite you to close your eyes or cap them, which means to look down at what's in front of you, like the floor or a table, and start to become aware of what you are aware of. Perhaps you hear some sounds around you, or notice the temperature in your room. Maybe it feels hot or cold, or maybe your mind is thinking about something. Without any judgment, just notice it. And with a gentle kindness, try to release anything you may have been holding on to. Bring your attention into your body. Notice where you're seated. Feel the support of the chair or the floor beneath you. And let's take a nice, long, slow, deep breath in through your nose and a long, slow, full exhale out through your nose or mouth, whatever is comfortable. And let's do another nice, long, slow, deep breath in. And as you breathe out, bring your full awareness to the sensation of these breaths. Notice where your body moves as you're breathing today. And now let your breath return to its natural rhythm and depth, and simply become aware of the sensations of breathing. You may notice the cooler air on the inhale and the warmer air on the exhale. You may notice the pause between your breaths. And now, as we wrap up, take a moment to set an intention for what you would like from our time together today. Perhaps you'd like to find more peace in your day for you and your students, or perhaps just an open curiosity and excitement about what mindfulness can bring into your life and into your classroom. And then when you're ready, slowly open your eyes and bring yourself back into the room. Thank you for joining me for that mindful moment. So, as you're coming out of it, I'll share a few more things about that. Mindful moments are a quick and easy tool that you can use during transition times. So, think about, for example, when you're going from home to school or school to home. You can use it between meals. You can use it between lessons with your students. Really, it's great for any time that you're stopping one thing and starting another thing. Because, see, what happens is when we switch activities, sometimes our thoughts get scattered and our attention stays on something that we were doing before or wanders to something that we're doing in the future. And so, a mindful moment gives us an opportunity to bring ourselves into the present moment. It gives ourselves to let our minds catch up with where our bodies are. I've heard someone say recently, be where your feet are. So, this is an opportunity for us to be where our feet are together. Also, I like to note that mindful moments can be a variety of things. There's no one right way to do it. What we did just now is just one way to do a mindful moment. A mindful moment can be another mindfulness practice. It can be closing your eyes and listening to some sounds. I always say the best mindfulness practice is the one that you'll do. So I always make sure people know to make mindfulness practices work for them. So I encourage you to make it your own, to use this practice right now. You can go ahead and take it right into your classroom and teach it to your students. You can use it for yourself. Just remember, there's no one right way to do this. There's no one script that's correct. It's more about taking the time to acknowledge the transition. Okay, so now we're ready to move forward. So, as a teacher, I'm guessing that you could be familiar with this analogy of filling an imaginary toolbox. In this training, that is what we're doing. We are filling your mindfulness toolbox with a bunch of different tools, techniques, and resources. Some will help you be more present. Some will help you be more patient. Some will help you go inside during moments of stress and find ways to calm yourself down. And some will even help you change your brain in order to better respond rather than react to a situation. Let me show you now a mindfulness toolbox sample. Here we have a mindfulness toolbox sample. So what we have here is some tabs along the bottom with different resources. The first one being the toolbox, and here you'll see the practices. You'll see a description link, which I'll show you in just a moment, and then some notes to help jog your memory of what it is. Now, as you go further into the toolbox, here is an example of an optional accountability tracker that can be used if you like to keep track of things and want to have back and forth communication during the training, then this will be available for you. This is, again, like I said, this is optional, but we'll put the practices in each week and you can tick off the ones that you are doing. I also show videos and also don't have time to show all of the videos that I think are really wonderful out there. So I create a resource of videos of things that I've shown you during the training, but also videos that would be really wonderful for your students when you're teaching them mindfulness. I have a list of books here, recommended children's books, recommended adult books, and we add to this and it grows as the training goes along. Here are some articles connected to some of the topics that we learn about, websites. I always like to end a session with a quote to contemplate, so I include those in the toolbox as well in case you like those. And so just going back here to this part of the toolbox, so we just did a mindful moment. So let's say that you want to teach that to your students and you don't want to be busy taking notes during the training of all the steps. You want to be present. I want you to be present with me during the training. You want to be present during the training as much as you can. So what I've done is created a collection of documents that you will have access to for as long as it's not just during the training. You'll have access to these forever. And when you click on it, it opens to a document that gives you an overview of the practice and also the steps, and then some tips down here at the bottom. So each practice that we do together will come with one of these documents. And so, as you can see, these are other techniques that you learned during the training, and there is a document link for all of them. Okay, so now what we have is some titles of sessions so that you can get an idea of what sorts of things we're going to be going through during this mindfulness teacher training. They all build on one another, and I'll be honest, it says sample module titles because I'm a teacher, and as you can probably relate to, I'm constantly updating and modifying my teachings to be better, to be more efficient, and specifically tailored to the group or individual that I'm working with. So these will stay generally the same, but they might shift a little bit. And what we'll do now is take a little peek into some of the things that are going to be in some of these modules. So the way this is organized generally is that the first four sessions really focus on teacher well-being, developing or strengthening your own personal practice because you can't pour from an empty cup. So what are some of the things that we talk about? Well, we start by laying our foundation. We talk about what is mindfulness and what are some of the benefits that people experience when they practice mindfulness. Now, I will add that in today's presentation, we'll go through the slides somewhat quickly, but of course, when we're going through the course, those slides will stay up for a little while. You'll have an opportunity to look at them. We'll talk about them, and I will also add additional information that's not on the screen. But for today's purposes, I'm just going to give you a little peek into what some examples are so you can see what the topics are. So, like I said, we talk about personal benefits, we talk about professional benefits, we talk about stress. As we know, stress impacts the bodies. And so we talk about how it impacts our body, our minds, our relationships, and our lives in general. We talk about chronic stress and also good stress. So that's called eustress. And so I like to make sure that things are balanced. Stress is a natural part of our life. We can't get rid of it, but we can recognize when it hits a tipping point, going from that good stress that is like a motivating stress to chronic stress. And what we're working on in mindfulness is self awareness, learning the difference between these things and how to manage them throughout our day and throughout our school year. We look at the nervous system. I really like to understand the science behind mindfulness. I'm not a doctor, as you know, but I do like to talk about the brain science and what's going on in our nervous system and understanding our stress responses. The nervous system and our stress response. When we understand that, we can understand why mindfulness is impactful. We can understand why these tools and techniques work. And then we can also better explain them to our students. And when I taught a brain science unit to my students, and they loved it and they got it. And so there are ways to teach these things that are really kidified for young students. They can be adapted for older students, but this type of knowledge is really empowering. So each module includes more than one technique for you to take and practice on your own and eventually share with your kiddos. And so here's an example of one of the techniques that we use called the stop technique. And again, that would be in the toolbox, and you would get a link to that document so you don't have to, so that you do remember how to do it. And then we also go into the mechanics of mindfulness and meditation and what are tips for creating a lasting practice and developing a deep practice for yourself. We end each session with a formal practice or meditation, and we'll actually do that today as well. So stick around for a treat at the end. And this is an example of another formal practice that we do. So the previous one was the mindful breath awareness. This is the mindful body scan. These are formal practices or meditations that we do at the end of the sessions. I also have them recorded on a YouTube channel, and I give you the link to those if you want to listen to them, if you want to play them for your students or anything like that as well. I also like to end sessions with a quote for your contemplation. And so here's an example of a quote. And like I showed you, I also store those in the toolbox for you as well. So now here, just revisiting some of the module titles, well-being and resilience, productivity and focus, and emotional intelligence. Those are the second, third, and fourth modules that have to do with our own personal well-being. And so here's some samples of things that we cover during those sessions. We look at the power of attention. This happens to be one of my favorite things to talk about because it's seriously so powerful. And so we talk about noticing attention, what are we paying attention to, and how is that impacting our physiology and our mental health? How is it impacting our daily lives? We look at things like this. What's in my control and what's out of my control? What can I do with these things that are in and out of my control? This is an opportunity for a discussion of what resonates with you. What does this bring up? And so we do a lot of discussion as well through the training. Like I mentioned, we talk about our nervous system and the stress response. And one of the things that we talk about is called downshifting. So, this is understanding that we're using different parts of our brain when different things are going on in our life. And so, when we have a stress response, our thinking brain, our ability to reason and problem solve goes offline temporarily. And it's really helpful to know this as teachers because when you have an understanding, a better, deeper understanding of stress and what causes some of these things to happen, we can see it in ourselves, we can see it in our personal lives and the people around us, and we can definitely see it in our students. And we can do things to help them understand what's going on and how to help themselves, how to support themselves. And we can provide that support, that scaffolding that we do as teachers, provide them the support, teach them how to do it themselves eventually, and then release that control and let them implement these things on their own. Hopefully, while they're your students, and if not, somewhere down the road when they are a bit older, even into adulthood. So, we're equipping our students with these amazing tools by modeling them ourselves and also offering them to them during the day. So we talk about resiliency and we talk about self-awareness. This is also one of my personal favorite things about mindfulness. Mindfulness is all about self-awareness. And when we're able to recognize what's going on in ourselves, then we're able to support ourselves and our well-being better and better and better. And the better we're supporting ourselves, the better we're able to show up for our students. We do self-awareness exercises. As I mentioned, one of the modules is about productivity and focus. And so we talk about how to increase focus, how to improve focus to increase productivity, which then increases efficiency. So the goal here is to use mindfulness living tools to increase our ability to focus and be productive, which leads to efficiency. And a high quality of efficiency can be great in life and especially at work because it frees up our time outside of work, making our work-life balance more achievable. We talk about this thing called presenteeism, which is a newly identified phenomenon, which means physically showing up in life, but not being there emotionally or mentally. I'm sure we've all experienced that before. And we know as teachers, we need to bring our best selves for our students and we need to be our best selves for us as well so that we don't burn out. But sometimes we have to show up when we're not feeling so great, when we're overwhelmed, when we're stressed. And so what can we do about that? What can we do when we do show up like that? How can we take steps to balance ourselves out a little bit and be as present as possible for ourselves and for our students? This is a good one. We talk about multitasking versus monotasking. We are in a career that is built around multitasking, and we think of it traditionally, think of multitasking as a talent, as something that we get better at and that we can do, especially as teachers. One of the things that I always prided myself on was being able to teach a small group lesson and also listen to the conversation that was happening over there in the corner and being able to what I thought I was doing was being able to do both at one time. And what I learned is that's not what I was doing. Through my mindfulness practice, I learned that multitasking is actually just switching back and forth these micro switches in our brain, and it deteriorates our ability to be present with what we're doing. And also, it makes things take longer because I'll show you. There's a lot of research out there that shows what happens in our brains when we multitask. Now, there is about 2% of the population who can truly multitask, but most of us are attempting to multitask and not actually doing it. And what we're doing is we're dropping our accuracy, we're dropping our presence. We talk about monotasking and tips to enhance monotasking. So I try not to give you information and leave you hanging with, well, what do I do about that? I try to give you information to build knowledge and to empower you with that knowledge, and then also give you tips for what to do about that, how to balance those things out. How do I increase the habits and ways of being that I want to, and how do I shift away from some habits that may have developed that are not serving me? So this is an example of another practice that we do called a mindfulness check-in mini practice. So here's another practice called the 4-7-8 breath. And this is actually a great time to pause and do another practice together. I've been talking for a little while, and so this is a great time for me to teach you another technique that you can take with you and also teach to your students, use yourself, and use in your classroom. So this is a breathing technique that I teach to absolutely everybody I work with. It is a super impactful, quick, and simple way to bring your body into a relaxed state. So let me tell you a little bit more about it. So the technique is rooted in the ancient pranayama practice that is part of the yogic breath practice, but it was popularized by an integrative medicine specialist who practices in Arizona. I have his link in the practice description document. And so, one interesting thing to note is that exhaling longer than inhaling triggers the vagus nerve, which is a nerve in our body, to release a tranquilizing substance onto the heart, which causes the heart rate to slow down and then sends a signal to your brain that you're safe, and it creates an immediate relaxation response. So I'm going to explain the steps as we do it together. So go ahead and join me. We're going to start by clearing all the air from our lungs with a full exhale. And then we're going to breathe in for a count of 4 through the nose. Try to breathe into your belly as opposed to only your chest. And when you get to the top of that count of 4, we're going to hold for a count of 7. And then we're going to let the breath out for a count of 8. Now, when you do this, you're going to do this a tad bit forcefully through your mouth, perhaps creating a whooshing sound like this. We're going to do that for a count of 8. You might gently push your belly in as well. And that's one round. We're going to do 3 more rounds. And so I will do them with you and also count, but I'll be counting on my fingers, not out loud. So here we go. Breathing in for a count of 4, holding for a count of 7, and then breathing out. You might feel your shoulders relax. Just feel that relaxation in your system as you breathe out. And so again, breathing in for a count of 4, holding for 7, and then breathing out. Again, breathing in for 4, holding for 7, and then breathing out for 8. All right. So, this is a really wonderful in the moment technique because you can bring a sense of calm immediately to yourself, and it can be done anywhere, anytime. So, quick tip before we go on: brain and nervous system training are just like muscle training. It takes time and practice for the body to respond. So, I recommend doing 4 rounds of this 2 times a day in order to create tone in your nervous system. So then, when you need it in a stressful moment and you do it, your brain can be like, oh, I recognize this thing. This is the thing that I do to calm down. And your body can respond more effectively and more efficiently because it's familiar. Okay, so moving on now to a little bit more of the preview, we talk about emotional intelligence in our training. We talk about this for ourselves and also for our students. We go into the different domains of the emotional intelligence. One of them being empathy and also positive outlook. Okay, so here we are back at the titles because that was an overview of the first 4 sessions. And session 5, module 5, is where we make the shift and broaden our focus to include classroom environment in our students. We start by talking about what does mindfulness look like in a classroom. So as I mentioned, I like to keep things realistic. So look, we are still teaching young humans. They are not miraculously going to stop being kids. So I'm not here to teach you how to tame your students. I'm just here to share with you ways that I have had success in my classrooms with these tools and how you can kidify these concepts successfully and teach them to your students as well. So, what does mindfulness look like in a classroom? We're going to pause here for a moment. I'm not going to go past this one quite as quickly because I do want to speak to this. So, there is a huge overlap in the way that I teach mindfulness. There's a huge overlap with social emotional learning. In my opinion, you can't really have one without the other because social emotional learning has to do with self awareness and how do we interact with other humans. And so I believe that they are very closely intertwined. And so there's a big overlap when you teach these in the classroom. You are teaching children to tune into their bodies and listen to the messages from their bodies. We teach mindful communication, peaceful problem solving skills, learning to identify distractions and increase focus. I also teach meditation to children. So we're not expecting for there to be total silence in the classroom for 15 minutes every day while your kids sit there and meditate. But teaching them the benefits of meditation, what it's like to meditate, and also the self-compassion and the patience and all of those things that come along with trying something that might feel a little bit hard and messing up and trying it again and doing it as a team, as a group, as a class. Those are some of the things, some of the benefits of going into meditation with your students as well. And so as you can see here, I wrote, we are planting seeds for well-adjusted, emotionally intelligent teenagers and adults. That's the hope. All right, so a takeaway for you. One of my very favorite ways to bring mindfulness into an already existing routine is through mindful eating. So, if you are at a school that has snack time already built in, this is a lovely place that you can seamlessly slide mindfulness in. Okay, so you set the tone in your room, lights low, calm, like classical music playing. And what we did in my class was we would all sit in a circle and we would spend the first few minutes of mindful eating or snack time, mindful eating time, we called it. We would spend the first few minutes quiet. Everybody would be getting their snacks out. And at the beginning of the year, we would go over what does mindful eating look like? So you would talk about these things and talk about observing the textures and feeling the feeling of chewing and swallowing and noticing flavors unfold and things like that. And so that's what the students can be doing at the beginning of mindful eating time. They're sitting there in a peaceful environment and everybody's quiet and eating their snack. And then depending on the age group, When I taught second grade students, we did that for about 5 minutes, and then we would have quiet sharing time where they were usually coming in from a specials class or a recess. And so we would take turns sharing either what are you noticing about your food, or what did you do in your specials class? What is something fun you did at recess? And so we would still use that time for talking and sharing, but we always started it out very calm and we kept the quiet music going. We kept the peaceful environment, and teachers would walk by our classrooms, our second grade rooms when we were doing mindful eating, and they would say things like, it feels like you're walking by a yoga studio or something like that. And so they were always asking, what are you doing in there? And people would come and sit in on our mindful eating time to learn how to do it with their students as well. And the students really enjoyed it, and they would take it home to their families as well and do mindful eating at the dinner table. They would walk their parents through a mindful eating activity where they have them chew really slowly and smell their food and feel the weight of their food and talk about the flavors and things like that. And then they would come back and share how they had shared that with their families. So, this is something that I'm sharing with you right now that you can take immediately to your classroom and try with your students. So, one thing that I will share is that over the past 24 years, I have worked in various schools, mostly around the United States, but also overseas at an international school in South Korea. So, I've worked at 6 different schools, and I have noticed that there are common routines wherever you go. And so what I've done is I've taken some of those routines and things like this, like snack time, arrival, and school day preparation, dismissal, things that happen no matter what the school is. And I've taken those and shared how to integrate mindfulness into those things so that if you don't have a mindfulness time set aside for your students during the day, you can still have a mindful classroom. So, for example, body breaks. Body breaks can be very physical and they can also be very mindful. This is a great time to integrate breathing techniques. It's a great time to introduce beginning meditation exercises that incorporate movement, but also incorporate the foundational understanding of meditation techniques. As teachers, we all need to get our students' attention. So we go over some mindful ways to do that. And also just ways to make the classroom environment more mindful. We talk about gratitude practices, about mindful communication practices. Here you'll see the stop technique again. We talk about this whole body listening, which is a mindful communication technique. I share things that I've done in my classrooms before, like this love and gratitude wall. This is a practice called the five senses practice. As I mentioned, we go into emotional intelligence in the classroom environment. And so we'll talk about ideas like the peace corner and perspective taking. And again, like I said, gratitude practices. One of my very favorite things that we did in my classroom, I did not create this, I learned this from another teacher, but oh my gosh, it was so beautiful, was ending our day with appreciations. Every school I've worked at had a chaotic dismissal, and it was such a beautiful way to make dismissal just a little bit less chaotic. We would sit in a circle at the end of the day, all with our backpacks ready to go, waiting for our bus to be called or for the walkers to be called or whatever it was, and we would share appreciations with each other. Appreciations for someone in the classroom, for something that happened during the day. If we were sharing it for like a teacher in another space, we would all whoosh send the appreciations out to them, and it was just a really lovely way to end the day. All right, and here we have self-love, self-compassion, self-kindness. This is a very big piece of mindfulness, of the way I teach mindfulness. It's a very big piece for the self-care and also for students. And so even though the second set of 4 sessions is broadened to include the classroom, we still touch on personal self-care as well. So we go into self-compassion and self-kindness, talking about the science behind it. What are some exercises that you can do, like this one called How Would You Treat a Friend? This is a really lovely one. And also just simple self-compassion breaks. And then we talk about how to make self-compassion kiddified. So we talk about self-talk and I label it the worry voice. We teach a technique called Be Your Own Best Friend and hug breathing. These are all ways to practice self-love and self-compassion that are kid-friendly. And we wrap the training up with how to sustain your mindfulness practice. Make a plan for it, how to sustain it. What do I do? How do I keep it going? And what are some tips? What are some tips to make sure that this happens? I'm always about sharing tips. And so, one thing that I would also like to add is that I also include a complimentary session a month after we complete the training in order to check in, ask if there's any questions, offer continued support, advice, tips, anything like that. And with some teachers, I have continued to work with them on a one-on-one basis in order to do like more of the accountability tracking and just support. And those sessions look very different than the training sessions, but I'm happy to share more about those as well. And so now we are going to end our session here with a guided practice, just like we do, a guided formal practice, just like we do in the trainings. So, the guided practice that we're going to do is a breath awareness practice. It will last about 5 minutes. So, I invite you to get yourself into a comfortable position, shift around, make sure that your body is comfortable and feels like you can sit in that position for the next few minutes. And gently close your eyes, or you can cap them. Like I said before, that means just to look at what's in front of you, either the table or the floor, just gazing down. And we're going to bring our attention into our body. You can notice your body wherever you're seated. Feel the support of your chair or floor beneath you. And we'll take a couple of long, slow, deep breaths in through your nose and out through your nose or mouth, whatever is most comfortable. And as you take your deep inhales and exhales, become aware that you are bringing more oxygen in, awakening your body. And as you exhale fully and deeply, start to experience a sense of relaxation into the moment. And so after your next deep breath, let your breathing return to its natural rhythm and pace. And we'll breathe naturally for the rest of the practice, ideally through your nose. And so I invite you to bring your awareness to your body, noticing the sensations present as you sit. Notice where your hands are. Notice where your feet are resting. And allow the sensations that arise. Don't resist anything, simply become aware of them. Observe rather than label or judge them. Notice the movements of the body in response to the breath. No need to control or regulate the breath, simply feel its sensations. When your mind wanders, remember it's the nature of our minds to think. So simply notice your mind has wandered and gently, without judgment, refocus it on your breath. It doesn't matter how many times you have to do this. Remember, we're practicing. So we'll continue for the next couple of minutes, focusing on your breathing in the same ways that you've been doing, feeling the movement of the body, perhaps noticing the pauses between the breaths or the temperature of the air as you breathe in and out. You can even choose to count your breaths if that feels good. I'll keep track of the time for the next few minutes. Remember, if your mind wanders, notice and gently bring it back to your breathing. And so now, as we begin to wrap up this practice, I invite you to bring your awareness back to the room that you're in, listening to some of the sounds. You can start to wiggle your fingers and toes and perhaps deepen your breath a little bit. And when you're ready, gently, slowly open your eyes. The integration period is important to not jar your nervous system. Thank you so much for joining me for that practice and this presentation. Welcome back to the space. I'm going to wrap up by just sharing with you this program really comes from the heart. It combines 24 years of my experience as a classroom teacher and a mindfulness and meditation coach, blending my professional knowledge with my personal practice into this transformative experience specifically tailored for teachers and school faculty. So I am really excited to share this powerful journey with you and your students. On the screen here, you can see how to find me, how to get a hold of me through phone or email. I also have a website, which is inhaleexhaleconnect.com. I'd like to share a testimonial with you. If this training resonates with you, feel free to visit my website. As I mentioned, it's www.inhaleexhaleconnect.com. And there you can find a page titled Mindfulness Teacher Training Feedback, where there's more information about the teacher training and more testimonials. So you can find more details about the program. Additionally, I have offered this program one-on-one and also to groups and even entire teams. And in some cases, the schools have funded the training. So I'm happy to provide materials that you can share with your school in order to help generate interest or explore the possibility of funding through PD resources. So don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. Thank you again to Educating Mindfully for hosting the resource showcase. Please visit their website, educatingmindfully.org, to learn more, to subscribe, become a member, donate, and explore their micro credential program. Thank you so very much and have a peaceful day.